motion is agreed to. The question now is that Part 3 stand part. Advise members that this is debate on clauses 148 to 202, and it also includes the schedules 3B through to 4.
Chairman.
I call the Honourable David Cunliffe. Tēnā koe, Mr Cunliffe.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chairman.
Kei te pihe koe.
Delightful to see you at this hour of the morning, which I think is still technically part of Tuesday, but you're looking in pretty good shape, sir. Mr Speaker, I'm so pleased that you've mentioned the SOPs, because I'm sure that they're going to excite a lot of attention from members on our side of the House. And this is a very important part of the bill, and I hope, sir, that with your good grace we will have ample time to scrutinise its clauses, because this is fundamental legislation. This might sound like housekeeping, but believe me, it's not. This is some of the core legislation that amends the Public Finance Act, the State Sector Act, the SOE Act and other core acts that actually determine the machinery of government, so that when the ministers of the day, the cabinet of the day, pulls the levers of power, something happens and we can tell what happened. And for that to occur, we need to make sure that the rules of delegation, of financial probity, of accountability all are tight as a drum and work as they should. Now, in the past, sir, one of the things that's happened is in an effort to make sure that the public service and the public sector operates efficiently and accountably, there has been a tendency for departments to work on an individual basis and for their differing views to ultimately be brought together around the cabinet table if they haven't been harmonised prior in a cabinet committee. And for many, many years, governments of both sides have viewed that as an imperfect state of affairs. And we look forward to hearing the Minister and the Chair, with his long experience, give the House the benefit of his views as to how this could be made to work better. But for members opposite, the objectives set out in Part 3 of the bill are incontrovertible. That is that the government of the day should be able to issue whole-of-government directions and employ a range of new legislative powers set out in this part of the bill to require, if persuasion hasn't already done it, to require government agencies to work together for a common cause. Now, it might be, for example, let's think of a random example, border security, requiring immigration and customs to cooperate by data sharing to pool their information to better identify risks coming across the border. Now, a lot of that happens anyway. I don't wish to create any false impression. There is excellent cooperation between those two agencies, but at the level of detail, if necessary, this part of this bill will give the Crown the authority to legally require cooperation between departments, which is particularly important for enforcement agencies. And of course, this is an interesting week to be discussing this bill, because outside the House and media land, public attention has been focused on cooperation between a number of other agencies, some of which has been decidedly outside the law, where some of our security agencies have been subcontracting to others without legal authority. And, sir, there is now a desperate scramble by the government to legalise activities which have hitherto, by its own admission, been outside the law in some 88 known cases. Now, that is certainly something that neither side of the House could countenance. The question is whether the solution to that is actually to rein in some of those behaviours or otherwise to adjust the law to catch up with reality. Sir, the Labour opposition believes the rule of law should be paramount, and at no time should there be any actions outside the law. But that's a debate for another day. Sir, the amendments to Part 3 are crucial. They adjust aspects of the Crown Entities Act 2004 and bring that alignment to bear not only to government departments, but to entities that are one step removed from departments, Crown entities, and this is also an extremely interesting avenue for debate, because there is a well-known and very visible oxymoron going on the part of the national government here. On the one hand, they are passing this legislation, which we heartily agree with, that there should be ways of improving cooperation between core Crown agencies and Crown entities and getting Crown entities to work together. And on the other hand, they are embarked on a partial privatisation program for state-owned entities, which will make it harder for the Crown to govern those state-owned enterprises as a portfolio and put them further away from cooperative effort. Now, take the key example is the electricity system. We are an energy-dependent country. Right around the country, New Zealanders are either shivering through the winter or they're facing bigger power bills, and the Prime Minister thinks that's just fine and dandy. The power prices are not, Mr Chairman, not too high. He thinks they're, quote, about right. But New Zealanders know they're not about right at all. They've been going up faster than wages, faster than incomes, and they're putting huge pressure on our families. Mr Speaker, last weekend I was door knocking in Upper Hutt, and I had the privilege of meeting some families that are doing it tough, in flats that look more like dog kennels, that leak, that had mould growing up the walls, with children growing up with respiratory disease. Mr Chairman, every time I go out door knocking in areas of high deprivation, I am shocked all over again by the way some people live. And why do I mention that? Because energy poverty is part of the bigger picture. And Mr Chairman, by privatising our energy system, as the government is trying to do, they are going to be putting more pressure on family budgets because power prices are going to rise. What's the relevant to this bill? The relevant is very clear. In this bill, the government is trying to draw Crown entities into closer cooperation by requiring that cooperation through whole-of-government directions. At the same time, it is removing the existing power to direct state-owned enterprises, the power companies, currently residing in the SOE Act, and scrubbing that out because they will just be publicly listed companies like any other in which the Crown happens to hold 51%. But no power to direct, no surprises rule, no portfolio synergies, no sense of strategy, Mr Chairman. That will be the oxymoron at play. The government's probably doing the right thing in this bill, but they're sure as heck doing the wrong thing with the privatisation of SOEs. Mr Chairman, broadening the grounds, as this part does, on which the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State Services can issue whole-of-government directions, and allowing those directions to be issued either to all departments or a smaller group of entities, including Crown entities, presupposes a more important point, a prior point, which is, does the government have a strategy upon which to direct? And Mr Chairman, we have a government here which at best resembles parts of the Holyoake government of the 60s. Steady as she goes, don't fiddle with it, she'll be right. I've never seen 4 less effective, more boring budgets than the last 4 that Bill English has brought down. And the bits that weren't boring and meaningless were positively downright awful, like giving huge fiscally negative tax breaks to rich people and putting GST up on everybody else, Mr Chairman. What has this government actually done in the way of economic strategy other than making New Zealand's incomes more unequal through the tax system and putting off paying for superannuation so our children face higher taxes, Mr Chairman? Mr Chairman, the government wants to issue whole-of-government directions. This part of this bill gives them the power to do so. We think that's a good thing. But, Mr Chairman, in order to issue whole-of-government directions, they've got to have a direction to travel in the first place. And the problem with this good-for-nothing, lackadaisical, lazy, useless national government is they wouldn't know a direction if they tripped over it. They wouldn't know a strategy if it bit them on the behind. They wouldn't know an economic plan if it fell off the top of Stephen Joyce's glossy head. Mr Chairman, I've seen so many glossies out of Moby Dick, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, that I am so sick of PR spin, rebranding and reissuing things that have been done since Adam was a cowboy. And what I am still waiting for is a real plan that will grow jobs and incomes and employment and well-being. So it's all very well, Mr. Chairman, in this part of this bill, Part 3 of the innocuous, boring state sector public finance reform bill, to give themselves the power to issue whole of government directions. But there's no direction to issue, Mr. Chairman, because they have no idea what direction the country should be heading in.
I call the Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and it's a pleasure to rise to talk on Part 3 of this legislation. We're on